Hey there, and welcome back to the Magnanimous Collective. I'm your host, Sean Kubota. Let's start it off with a deep breath into the belly. And let it go. Oh yeah, dropped in. Today's pod is featuring none other than me. Again, sorry. It is my commitment to do one of these podcasts a week. The last podcast I posted was when I was still in the midst of grief. I'm kind of still in the midst of grief. I feel like in that space of mourning and grieving, it feels off to be happy or joyous, or like in the midst of social interaction, it's one thing. For me to be creating content and funny content, and it just hasn't felt right. I've been in the space of just like, I don't know, reintegrating into what life is now. And a part of me has been in a space of wondering whether or not I should give myself as much grace as I have been giving me, myself. And at another level, I'm also recognizing like, hey, this is happening right now. And I can choose to honor myself through it, or I can choose to blame myself, guilt myself, all these things. There's a lot of stuff that's been coming up. There's a lot of stuff that's been coming up in regards to what I am not doing, and what that could incur, and all these things. And I know that when people go through loss, they're given grace. They're given sympathy and love. And at the same time, a part of me knows that like nothing is getting done, And so there's this disparity between like, how much do I allow for myself to receive this grace and this love? And how much am I also maybe not honoring my grandfather's legacy by choosing to be inactive and do nothing? And it got to the point where making this pod was really this pod is super last minute. I usually post on Thursdays. This is being filmed on Thursday, so I don't feel integrous with that, but at the very least I'm going to get it done. I have guest pods lined up. As I've been editing them, they were recorded in a different space, a different time, a different state of being, and editing them right now has just felt very off. It hasn't felt like the energy and the vibration that I'm in. And not to say that I don't want to put that vibration out into the world, but it feels weird to push that out right now when it doesn't necessarily correlate with what I'm feeling right now. What I'm feeling right now is actually analyzing exactly what's going on through this process of grief, how it's potentially affecting me through all of these different aspects of growth, of embarking on big career moves, and really being present with that and myself as I go through these times of despair and doubt and confusion, and how grief has been kind of in the background, not steering the ship, but being something that has actually, without necessarily me knowing it, not hampering, but really affecting the choices that I make, specifically the choices for my mindset, my mind state, right? Because ultimately that is everything. How we choose to perceive anything is like literally everything. It's how we create this reality. It's how we just like, it's how we do it. It's how everything ends up being. So it's been really fascinating to witness myself go through these really tumultuous times of just feeling so distraught and so in despair, coming into the space of doubt. Once again, you can know things intellectually, but when you're actively experiencing doubt, when you're actively experiencing imposter syndrome, or coming into a space of doing something that requires a lot of bravery and courage, when you're already blanketed in a space of grief and mourning, it can actually, or at least what I've been witnessing, it's been affecting my mind state to the point where a lot of those things, it has been easier to fall into a space of despair, into a spiral of like, depression, of feeling not like paralyzed is the better word. Feeling like in this space of being stuck and feeling like so heavy that you can't breathe and that you can't move. That's what I've felt and dealt with. And my partner, my therapist, coach have all been like, well, yeah, bro, this stuff happened. And for me, I've been like, yeah, but I've been over to get over it. I'm happy now for my grandfather. Like, I miss him. I have a candle lit, his picture right here. Like, I tell him I miss him every day. I pray to him. I love him. And I feel like it's not affecting me because I'm not sobbing all the time. But then again, I'm not responding to people on Instagram. I felt overwhelmed in responding to everyone, and like, don't feel like engaging on that platform right now, really. And don't feel like, I just feel like kind of like hiding away and just like being to myself, which is kind of like being depressed, So all that to say, like, I've been able to witness, even in the midst of feeling, for the most part, normal, when I really look at it, when I really observe myself, I'm like, oh, you are sad. Oh, you are grieving still. You are mourning. Even if you're not crying all the time, you're still in this space of holding this heaviness and feeling this pain, even though I'm not outwardly expressing it all the time. Even if I'm able to get through the day without crying and, getting super sad or whatever, that doesn't mean that there's not still a deep sadness there, that there still isn't something lingering there that could end up affecting how I'm perceiving everything else, especially if it's something very, very giant that would take me really showing up in a really big way. And with that mix of being in the morning, being in this space, not really wanting to really be for, like, it's like kind of like at the end, in hindsight, it's like, oh, duh, dude, of course you're going to feel like doubtful. Like, can I do it? Like, what am I doing? Like, all these different things. Because this podcast from the get-go has been a labor of love in the sense that it was never meant to be like the thing. This podcast was meant to be able to provide education, guidance, to speak on topics, to have courageous conversations, to hear about people's stories that had risen above adversity and chosen to own their narrative, and chosen to own that they are the creators in their lives, and how that happened and what's happened since, and how they're still choosing to do that, because it's an ongoing journey. Enlightenment isn't a space, and I'm not saying that we're reaching enlightenment. And if anything, if the enlightenment we're reaching is if I were to explain what enlightenment would be in this circumstance, it would be that we're reaching a space of ownership, of worthiness, of recognizing how powerful we are, how blessed we are, how loved we are, how worthy we are. And from that, what we do with that power of creation, what we do with our power of perception, what we do with being able to still have our hearts online while also still navigating within a society that is capitalistic and is trying to find its way through all these different melting pots of culture and traditions and ways of dressing, looking, being, all these things. Like, how can we have compassion? How can we also have love? How can we also hold boundaries? Like, what does it look like? What does it look like for us to have a society where we honor each other and there are consequences for when we step beyond those boundaries of honoring each other, while also still being in a place of love and compassion where we can have effective communication, we can have effective education and effective results in all ways, right? That's what this has been for, is to provide that space, to talk about all these things, to elaborate on what that can look like, to hear from other points of view. And it's also been so that I'm doing something rather than nothing, that I'm not just having all of this stuff brew within me, working all these jobs, trying to put it out through music, this has been the space to talk about these things and then be able to speak on them in a larger way, through the book and through speaking publicly and beyond. And yet it's also a testament of devotion, which is why I'm doing this right now. No one's holding me to this besides my coach and myself. to do one a week. If I didn't do one, no one would be mad. Not to say no one would care, but not very many people would care. Not only that, like, everyone would give me grace to not do one because of what happened with losing my grandfather. For me to take that and to utilize it as an excuse not to show up, even if I'm not showing up in the best way, even if I'm not the most prepared for this podcast, that does not feel integrous to me. It doesn't feel right to me. So that's why I'm doing this. Because truthfully, it's so interesting when you have a reason to, be like, I'm shoving it to the side. For a lot of my 20s, 30s, like, I've shoved a lot of things to the side and been like, oh no, this is like a fucking half-assed excuse. This is a reason. And like, yeah, they should buy it. They love me enough. They'll let me get away with it. This is a real reason. This is one of the most real reasons for me to receive grace and sympathy and allowance to not show up. Pretty much more than anything I've experienced in life, at least as I've been an adult. And it's been interesting to choose not to opt for that. Because, and that's not to guilt anyone who does, and I'm not saying at some point in time I will need it. But once again, it does not feel, for me, in this juncture in my life, it does not feel like something that is necessary, that makes sense, is integrous, that is honoring of those that I've lost. It also doesn't feel honoring of those that are coming and that are here, to not show up, even if I can't show up in the way that maybe I would like to, and that my ideal version of myself would. And just like I tell my clients, showing up is like, if you show up, you've already won. So, just want to give myself some love for doing this, because it's so easy when something like this happens to just choose to not do anything, and choose to not engage. And I've been doing my fair share of not engaging. But when it comes to this, when it comes to certain things of commitment and devotion and showing up in these ways, I think the silver lining here, if I haven't already beaten it to death already, is that, which is pretty intense saying, if I haven't described it enough already, it's that you showing up, even when you're not showing up the best, can still be powerful, can still be moving, can still change someone's life. How many times have we not shown up because we're just not going to do it perfectly or near as perfectly as we'd like? I know I am absolutely a culprit of that. I have done that a lot. And I guess my invitation here is to choose to show up even in the midst of adversity in the ways that you can. And to not go against that inner gut feeling of what you know is right and what you know you should be doing. Because that's going to lead you somewhere. It's going to lead you somewhere good. And I say that it's an invitation because I'm not telling you what to do. One of the conundrums of my work or my brand, the topics that I discuss, the stuff I'm about, is that I'm not trying to tell you what to do. Yes, I would like for you to be motivated. I'd like for you to become empowered and embodied and feel worthy and change your narrative and reframe your story. I would love that for you. I cannot make you do anything. I don't ever want to try to make you do anything. And ultimately, in the lens of honoring you, the furthest that I can reach in honoring you is to remind you of how powerful you are, how amazing you are, how worthy you are, how loved you are, and to let you know that in every moment you are making a choice either to accept that and to walk with that, alive in you and aware in you, or to deny that. And that the denial of it is ultimately your choice and will be honored as well. So, to clarify and to make that simpler, we are so loved that we are able to rise to the potential that we have been given and to the responsibility and power that we've been given, or to deny it and to act like we don't have it. That's how loved we are. I'm not a huge fan of, what's his name? Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook. He's, say what you will about Mark Zuckerberg and the billionaires of the world, but one of the things that he said in a video that I saw was that this Facebook was not the first thing he had done. He had had many failures. He had done many things, different games, different apps, all sorts of different websites, until he finally made Facebook, and it worked. And he was talking about other individuals who had failed many times, and we all know about Abraham Lincoln. There's so many individuals that have failed so many times. And one of the things that he said after that in summation was that give yourself the freedom to fail, because that's the only way to succeed. And just to break that down a little bit, giving ourselves the freedom to fail, that means that we're giving ourselves the grace to fail. And we're also giving ourselves the allowance to create something that can bring about change, that, aside from creating job opportunities and all that, like creating something that brings art into the world, that literally, and art can be everything. That's literally creating something that provides a conversation between two people is art. Creating something that creates a connection with people, in a sense, is art. We are creating and crafting experiences, right? And so for you to be brave and courageous enough and give yourself the allowance to create is paramount. And then through that, to allow for yourself to have the opportunity and the freedom to fail is monumental. Like, you're literally allowing for yourself to have learned experiences and then to move forward with them in a healthy mindset that advocates for your continued creation and then towards your continued growth and learning. And it's something that hits me hard because I have been an entrepreneur for my entire, I could say my entire life, but my adult life, I've formed many businesses. I've held many jobs and risen to levels of supervisor and managerial duties in all of them. And yet I've either stepped away from them because it ended up being not what I wanted, or that I recognized later on that I had maybe done something that I could have done more accurately. A good example is the essential oil company that I made. It's actually a very beloved company by many people, Light Body Creations, but I wanted to do things with the highest quality products available, have it in the nicest glass, have it be super geometrical, sacred geometry, and have it be super spiritual and aligned and just feel like freaking medicine, whoo. And it did. And also, how big is that market? And also, it was hard to ship. There were so many issues with it. And that's not to say that it couldn't have been successful. Even if I had that branding, if I would have done certain things and gotten a business loan and done all these different things, it could have been successful. I could have also been more accurate with what could be scalable. And I could have totally shifted all of the product and put it into, plastic. I could have, changed the branding so that it could be more receivable, to a mainstream audience. I didn't do that. And down the road, I don't know how many years down the road, I had just gotten burnt out, so burnt out that I was just like, I spent trips going up and down the coast of California, selling them, having them sold in stores all across California. I did giant bottle orders around the country. We vended events and shows and all these things and da 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 da. I got burnt out, and it just got to the point where I was like, you know what? I feel like I missed my target here. I have no more that I can give to this. I have to move on. And I've had several other instances like that, like working on this documentary I was making and have that all blow up in my face. All of that failure has led me to where I'm at now. And I'm so grateful as well to my family, because they've been there and essentially been supportive in a multitude of ways in the midst of my failure, whether that be through not just like shaming me entirely and, exiling me for the family or anything like that. Also, they've helped me out financially at times, when I've just been like broken. And I'm blessed with that. Now, I'm not a trust fund kid, and I don't have family like that can just throw money and then we can just create a business. Like, I bootstrapped all of it. There's a lot of things I could have done if I would have known better and if I wouldn't have been as stubborn. Should have gotten a business loan, should have done all sorts of stuff, things I didn't know then. And I've learned along the way. All this to say that getting to the place where I'm at now took so much failure. And as I'm experiencing myself go forward with this, it's also bringing up, like I said, all this doubt, all of these things of like, oh, can I handle another failure? Because my pride truly feels like it's just been like crushed over and over and over again. And there's a part of me that knows that I have to be grateful for that, right? Like I choose, we all choose. What do we choose to be grateful for? We either choose to be grateful for everything, or we're really not really grateful for much, right? If we're not grateful for the tragedy, then we're missing out on most of life, right? And so to be grateful for that refinement, for that purifying, for that ability to become more humble, to become more gracious in all ways. And yet there also being a human element of Sean, the guy who wants to start a family and is in his mid-30s now and is wanting to make moves and feeling far behind in certain ways, and yet feeling so far ahead in certain others, and just being like, man, can I handle another failure? Can I handle getting crushed again? Can I make it through that? To be honest, I hope I don't have to go. I hope I don't have to go through it, at least for this thing. I'd really like for what I'm building right now to succeed. Online coaching coming soon, as well as the new book, and much more to come. But that's been alive. That's been real. That's been viscerally very, very real, to the point where it's been hard to breathe. And this is outside of, or it's correlated, like we talked about in the beginning, to what happened to Grandpa. But it's in its own way, its own separate thing as well, that has been heavy on my heart and mind for months, years, something like that. So one of the ways that I've been able to navigate that, come to terms with it, process it, metabolize it, is to recognize that the fact that I'm having these feelings is a good thing. I was talking to my partner about it last night, and it was like, because she had held a lot of space for me. And I was saying to her, I recognize now that me feeling all these things, that me feeling the doubt, that me feeling terrified, even though I have all of these ideals about worthiness, about all these things, it's like, yes, and there's also this human component that is like, can I handle another failure? Can I pick myself up from that? The answer is yes. It's always going to be yes, truly. But that's my ego being like, I can't deal with it again. I don't want to be crushed again. And I don't. But all that to say, the fact that I'm feeling those things is justified and is able to be honored and makes sense considering the magnitude of what the hell I'm trying to fucking go forward and achieve. It's not a small thing. Choosing to speak on these topics and create a career around helping people form a healthy mindset, understanding these high-level concepts, like bringing all this forward is not an easy thing. And there's still a way for me to, reframe, shift, work through, feel all these feelings, and then not have to be feeling them all the time. But the fact that I'm feeling them even initially, I feel like I can honor and be grateful for, because at least I'm not so delusional and sociopathic that it's just like no one can tell me anything and I know that I'm right and da 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 da. I feel like the fact that I can observe myself having humility, even if it's more of a deflated level of confidence, forming the humility is still, if I'm able to see it objectively, is still a good thing. Because I would rather choose to hear and be led and be befriended by someone who is willing to be humbled and broken by things, rather than someone who is just like, oh, you can't tell me no, and just doesn't have any anything that can sway them. I think there's room for both. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but yeah, there's I wrote about it in Victim or Hero that getting to a certain level of success and greatness takes a certain level of delusion. It takes believing in yourself when no one else does. It takes something to birth something out of nothing, and it's not to poo-poo or dismiss or talk down on occupations where you go to school, but in reality, that seems really less stressful right now. And it's been tempting, right? My brother went to school to become an RN. He now has a nice house, has kids, stuff is good. I could become a MD, not an MD, but I could get my master's in psychology and become a licensed counselor, a marriage family therapist, which wouldn't be a bad thing. But do I need that in order to have legitimacy in talking about the things that I'm talking about? To some people, but is it that I don't know the information? Is that I don't have my own criteria and message and purpose laid out? No, it's not. And so, and yet, that would feel nice to just be like, this is what I'm doing. This is the pathway. All I need to do then is just find a job that works. Instead it's like, hey, this is all your stuff. Try to organize it. All of these thoughts and concepts that are so powerful that they move you towards having this be your whole thing. And then make a podcast, write a book, make content and videos, funny videos, as well as short form content about it. Create animations and then create an event and try to speak on this topic and coach people through it and create a whole occupation and career out of that from nothing. And I will say that if I wasn't here 8 years earlier, 6 years earlier, but if I had the vigor and tenacity that I did back then that I used for my essential oil company, and I were to be there right now, oh my goodness, even the tenacity that I had in 2019 before COVID, I feel like I've gotten a little bit beaten and battered, and maybe that's been exactly what I need in order to get to a certain level of humility and a certain level of grace and a certain level of connectivity and relatability, instead of just being the fireball that I am. This passionate Scorpio energy that I have. So I trust that all works out as it's supposed to. And if that is it, not if that is, but that being the case, all of this stuff has been to break me down to the place where I'm at, to be able to be relatable, to be able to have felt the depth of things that I felt, and have that be something that I can relate to others as well. Because, yeah, these consistent bouts of depression have been, they've been quite an ordeal to get through. And coming out of them, I'm like, whoa, what was that? It's kind of like a fever dream. It's like like when you're sick and you're just so deep in it and you're just like, this is never going to end. And then you're out of it. You're like, was that real? So yeah, I'm grateful and happy to have the awareness that I have now, to be observing myself as I'm literally going through the emotions of like, oh God, I feel so, this, that, I'm grateful to have the support that I have through my coach, my therapist, my partner, my friends. And I guess there lies a reflection for all of you, and an invitation to choose to be vulnerable, specifically with individuals that you feel intuitively in your gut that you feel really positive about being vulnerable with. And if you don't have those, don't buy whatever fancy shoes or new clothes or whatever, blah, blah, pay for some therapy, or, talk to me about coaching. But it's very important for us to have a support system. It's very important for us to have accountability. There's a difference between having someone to talk to and listen to you, and having someone to keep you accountable. It's one thing to get to release everything and to vent about everything. It's another thing to have someone who you allow and give some level of authority and power to, in order to set you straight. And when I say that, I mean to keep you accountable. Like, hey, where are you at with your worth story? How are you allowing for yourself to take accountability for your creation of all of that in this moment? And how can you find gratitude in it? Are you willing to do that? Or do you still need to feel the story that you're spinning right now in order to then do whatever, right? And in that is your choice. And then it is also not something that I would recommend, So that's where we're at. That is where we're at. And I have to say, when I decided to do this pod, I was not nervous, but I was like, shoot, am I going to be able to talk? I don't even know what I'll have to talk about, but it turns out there was quite a bit to talk about. And I feel like I'm closing it, but I don't even know if I am yet. I guess in that there's a certain piece there around trust and around faith and around coming into, like, what is channeling? What is all that? Is it tapping in? I'm now channeling. Or is it actually allowing for whatever might be there to get out of the way, and just to be in whatever type of essence, that you are, or whatever filter, you are, of which, God and Source pours through you, Creator pours through you to speak and to be and to express truth, rather than coming from a lens of obscurity that we might have through being humans, and also being so loaded up with certain dogma and certain like rules and things that we acquire through living in society, and all the minutia, all that stuff, right? If we pull that all aside and we're just able to be able to be not selfless, but devotional to more than just the self. I think there's a big difference there. The selfless feels that without, should write this down. The selfless feels that it is virtuous to sacrifice or martyr the self in order to give, when in actuality, it's not needed, and it actually perpetuates a opportunity for bitterness and resentment from the one who has martyred themselves in some capacity. When in actuality, there is more than likely a way to come to a space of mutual benefit, to come to a space where, both individuals are able to find something that find something to value, something to that effect. Yeah. I don't know. I think my blood sugar is getting low. I'm just feeling a little bit tired. It's been quite a day. So with that, I will say, look forward to some really nice guest podcasts coming up. If you've made it this far, if you have listened to this podcast, know that I'm deeply honored and I'm grateful and kind of in awe. This has been, like I said, a labor of love. This has been something to provide this type of knowledge and this type of awareness out into the world for whoever wants to receive it. And if I allow for myself to be a softie about it, it's been a little bit sad to see it not be received and to have put so much work into it. And yet, for those who have received it and who have listened to and who have commented and just supported, I'm so grateful. I'm very humbled. And, I come back to why I'm doing it and what can happen from it. And, we're already over 20 episodes deep, 21 episodes deep now. And so that's amazing, man. So I just want to give deep bows, deep gratitude for all of you for listening, for everyone who has, for everything and for everyone. All of this is a culmination of something and of everything, and grateful to be alive in this time. Big prayers up for my grandfather, Mario Kubota. Love you, Grandpa, and miss you. And last little pieces. Allow for yourself to feel. Invitation is to allow for yourself to feel and to observe and find compassion and grace for yourself to feel those things. And in that space of observation and compassion, we then will not have to make and create a story about how and why we're feeling those feelings. And we might actually find some respect for ourselves in the fact that, oh, wow, you're actually a good person because you feel this way, instead of not feeling something at all or feeling something in the opposite. You know what I mean? So I hope that rings true to you, and look forward to some really amazing podcasts coming up. And I just want to say thank you all so much for tuning in once again. This has been the Magnanimous Collective with Sean Kubota. I'll see you next time.